What's up? How you doing? Here we are. Beautiful night tonight. Beautiful night. Very peaceful and mild. So, I picked up a bottle of Old Spice. Old Spice. Have not bought one of these since, I don't even know if I've ever bought one of these, but I know we had one in the house years ago, probably like in the 80s. And open it up here. Back then, the bottles were glass. Now it's plastic. But the top little thing that would keep it closed, same thing. Wow. You smell that and it brings you back to the time when you first smelled it, right? So you know what it reminds me of? I'm going to tell you a little story and the reason I bought this. So when I was a kid, I went to a school in the 8th grade that was kind of far away from my house. And, you know, it was a bit of a hassle to get there. And then one day, I don't know how long it was, maybe a couple of weeks after the school began, there was a father, from one of the 5th graders who put his name in the office saying that if anybody needed a ride to the school and they lived around his area, he was happy to give him a lift. And somehow my father found out about it and contacted him. And he said, you know, we live down the street from you, literally down the street, 3-4 blocks away. And he said, "Oh, okay." He goes, "I can give your son a ride." And my father said to him, "How much do you want?" Because everybody at that school who would give rides to other kids, they charged something. And he said to my father, "I don't want any money. I go that way anyway. I'm just gonna give him a ride." He goes, "No money." And my father was very impressed with that. You know, it's like, wow, that doesn't even know us. He goes, he's giving us a free ride to school. And I was impressed, being a kid back then. That impressed me. So first day comes, and a red Chevelle station wagon, one of those, pulls up in front of the house, gives a beep. I had never seen this guy. I didn't know what he looked like. I go down, I open up the door, and I smell freshness coming out of the door. Old Spice freshness. I sat down and he goes, "What do you say, Nick?" And I never heard that before. What do you say? I mean, I've heard hello and things like that when you get a greetings, right? But I never heard of what do you say. So I said, I don't know. And he kind of left it alone. And I said hi anyway, but I didn't know what he meant by what do you say. So that's got to be something old-fashioned. So I sat there and I could smell the fragrance from Old Spice in the car, very refreshing. And with him, I got exposed to something that I never would have been exposed to. You know what? The Hit Parade, 1940s music. So he had a channel on every day, a station, every day, and it had 1940s, you know, Glenn Miller, that kind of stuff, the Hit Parade. And at first, you know, I didn't mind it, but I wasn't into it. But a couple of weeks went by, 3 weeks went by, and I'm sitting in the back, and I'm enjoying it now. I'm enjoying the style, the corniness of the lyrics, all of it. And I was a bit impressed by him. He never had a hair out of place. They talk about Fonzarelli. This guy, even better. So I'd get in the car. He always had a suit on, well dressed, right? He had hair that was trimmed, tapered, sides back, with a number 1, short on the top. He had a part on the side. His hair was salt and pepper, mostly salt. And really nice guy, well mannered. You know, the way he spoke, very, very nice guy. So I'd get in the car every morning. Every morning I would smell the Old Spice, and not only that, he would fix his hair up with this. So he wet the hair, he put some of this rather than put it in and then comb it. Everything was perfect on him. I mean, he looked definitely out of the 40s, you know, like it was 1948 or something. So I didn't know much about him. He had a son, 5th grader. I was a bit older, and we'd listen to these songs. Like I said, I got into it after a while. I'm still, you know, I still enjoy these songs because of him. He exposed me to them. So, you know, I didn't know much about his family or anything. And then one day I remember the son forgot his sandwich, his lunch. Now, I never got lunch from home. I used to get it at school. They had a cafeteria there. So we went back to the house, and I saw where he lived. And I was thinking, oh, this is kind of close to where I used to go up to the water tower. It's like on the way, on the right-hand side. I used to see this house all the time, but I never knew that one day the guy that owned it would give me a ride to school. So anyway, Christmas time came, had our break. We come back from break, and all of a sudden, I'm hearing rock and roll, you know, contemporary music, pop music on the radio. And I said, that's weird. I didn't know he had FM on here, but apparently he does. I was hearing Man-Eater, you know, those kind of songs back in the 80s. And then what happened was his son bought him one of those FM things. So if you only have an AM radio in your car, you can buy these adapter things, converters, whatever they call them, and you can listen to FM. So all of a sudden now we're listening to FM. And then a week goes by, we're doing that, and supposedly this was a gift from the son to the father. And I said to myself, I wonder why the father, you know, would get a gift like this. He's not really interested in this kind of music. He's interested in the 1940s hit parade. So the following week comes, I get in the car, and now we're back to listening to the 1940s music. I said, okay, maybe they have an agreement. So 10 days go by, and I hear the son says to the father, he's like, you know, I bought you that FM converter, and you don't even use it, all whiny, you know. And the father looks at him with a grin, and he says, you know, he goes, I think you bought that more for you than for me. And the son, there was an awkward silence. About 10 seconds go by, and the father says to him, I'll tell you what, this is what we'll do. One day you listen to your music, the next day I listen to my music. And the following, you know, several months, that's the way it went. One day we listened to 80s pop, the next day we listened to 1940s hit parade music. And I was fine. I was enjoying that ride. And, you know, the father died recently too. So every so often I would think about him. I was like, I wonder if that guy's still alive. I was kind of old back then. So the son was the baby in the family, and he had grown daughters and sons, and the son was the little one. And he was up there in age. He had to be, I don't know how old he was, but he was, you know, older than the average guy of a kid that age. So I would always wonder, I wonder if he's still alive, So about a week ago, I looked him up, and the obituary thing popped up, and I go, that's got to be him. Everything matches. I went to the picture, I looked, it was him. And he died in his almost mid-90s. You know, lived a long life. Very nice guy. Nothing negative to say about that guy. That guy was amazing. Very kind-hearted. I was impressed. And so here's the thing. I always wondered, you know, I wouldn't ask, you know, it would be kind of like intrusive, I felt, to ask him, what do you do for a living? So I never asked him. But he looked kind of like he would be a man who worked in an office, you know, in downtown, has a little cubicle, maybe he had an office where he was in charge of, you know, a department in some office, I don't know. So one day I said to his son, we were out in the parking lot at the school, in front of the gymnasium, I said, you know, your father reminds me of, I wanted to tell him, he reminds me of the actor that played, what was his name then? Not Dick York. Dick York, not the sergeant guy, the Dick York. Kind of reminded me, that kind of hairstyle, you know, not exactly the face, but it was similar. And I said, it reminds me of him. And he goes, oh, he giggled. He goes, you think my father is a what is it, an advertising executive or something. And I was thinking, well, no, I don't think he does that for a living, but I think he's kind of in that, some kind of style of that job, of that, you know, environment. But I never asked him, what did your father do? So I always wondered. So this is like 100 years later now, and I was always wondering, I wonder what that guy did for a living. He was always well dressed, perfect haircut, you know, well mannered, had this perfect scent, right? Well, it turns out, humble guy, turns out he was a teacher. And when I knew he was a teacher, but eventually he worked his way up, and I think he became principal of a school at some point. But yeah, and then I'm thinking about it, and I go, yeah, that matches. That kind of looks like you know, his style. So he was a teacher, and you know, there's very few people you run into in life that are that way, that style, that, you know, you feel safe around them, you feel like you can trust them. Very few people, even the ones that you may be related to, not many of them are trustworthy, right? Not many of them. But him, I trusted. And just smelling this brings me back to his car, inside his car, and I enjoyed that ride. That was a long ride. It was like a 45-minute ride. I would sit in the car and I would enjoy it. It was always the same route, and I'd sit there listening to the music and just pensive, you know, be pensive, just thinking about whatever, relaxing in the back seat. And the car had a peculiar gear change. It was an automatic transmission, but between second and third gear, it would make a very like, I don't even know how to describe the sound. It's like a whoosh, and then it would blend into the next gear, but only for that spot. Not 1 to 2, not 2 to 3. I think it was 3 to 4. You know, he'd accelerate. I'd feel the switching of the gears, but it was like this smooth grinding sound. I don't know if that's common in that vehicle, but yeah. So I may call the son someday, because I saw that they listed him in the obituary. If I find his number, I may just say, hey. But me and him never had a you know, a friendship relationship or anything. It was just somebody I knew by face alone, and whose father gave me a ride to school. And I think we only spoke that one time when I said to him, your father reminds me of the actor that played on the show Bewitched, Dick York. Other than that, I don't remember ever having a conversation with him. So, and the thing is, who knows if he would remember me. I may call him up and I may say, hey, you know, I'm the guy from the school you went to that used to get a ride from you guys, your father and you remember me? And then he may say, oh yeah, I do remember you. Or he may say, yeah, vaguely. I get that a lot, so, you know, from people that, you know, I knew years ago. You know, one guy I used to work with, was just me and him working in that spot, and he would come only in the summers. So 3 summers in a row, me and him working together, just me and him. So how much of a memory do you need to remember who was working with you during those summers? So years ago, like maybe 12, 13 years back, I located him, found his email address on the internet, and I contacted him, thinking that he would say, yeah, of course I remember you. So I gave him my description, had no doubt that he would remember me, because I had many conversations with him. We worked like 8-10 hours a day together, full week, and so I was sure he'd remember me. And then he sends me a reply, and he goes, I'm so sorry. He goes, I can't remember you. And then I explained conversations. We talked about music. I actually sold him a clarinet. I told him that. Nope, nothing. Didn't remember. Told him about his son. I told him that, you know, he would bring him once in a while to work with him. I told him that. Everything was accurate. He just couldn't remember me. And I'm like, I was the only person there. There was no one else. So, myopia of the mind. I don't know. I mean, if you were the only person working with me, I'd remember you. You know, I mean, how much does your memory have to slip for you not to remember that detail? And it's not like we were like avoiding each other. We talk all day there, all day, usually about music. So you never know who remembers you, who you left an impression on, and who, you know, erased you from their memory because you were nothing to them. You never know. So, yeah, refreshing. Makes you smell spiffy. Has that refreshing smell. But like I said, the second I smell that, it brings me back to 8th grade when I was in the back seat getting a ride to school. Yeah, I may call the son one day just to express my gratitude to him, express my fondness for his father. You know, I want to tell him your father was a very decent man, and I'm sure you know that. It's not like I'm explaining something to somebody, you know, who you know, is related to the guy. You know, as his son. I'm explaining it. I'm just telling him that from my viewpoint, that's the way I saw him, and hopefully he saw him that way too. Very nice guy. Anyway, probably shave later and try it out. Like I said, last time I handled Old Spice was probably in the 80s. But back then it was glass. Now it's soft plastic. They've cheapened everything. Anyway, that's it for now. Ciao.